Hey, welcome! Today, we're diving into a really interesting concept from our source material that might just explain that unique vibe you've been feeling this year. We're talking about the universal year one.
So let me ask you, have you felt it? That kind of, I don't know, electric feeling in the air this year? Maybe you've had this really strong urge to just wipe the slate clean and start totally fresh. You know, that feeling that this is the year.
Well, if that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And according to the source material we're looking at, that feeling is not just in your head. It's actually pointing to something way bigger, the start of a brand new 9-year cycle.
Okay, so a 9-year cycle. What does that even mean, right? Like, how can a year have a number? Let's dig into the numerology behind this whole idea of a universal year.
You know, the core idea here is actually super simple. It's all about taking the year and crunching it down to a single digit. Let's just walk through it for 2026 so you can see exactly how it works.
All right, so we start with the year itself, 2026.
And what we do is we just add up each of those digits. So that's 2 plus 0 plus 0 plus 6, which gets us to 10.
But remember, we need to get to a single digit. So we're not done yet. We just do it one more time. We add the 1 and the 0 together, and that leaves us with 1. And boom, there it is. That's the number that, according to this whole concept, defines the energy for the entire year.
So what this all means is that 2026 is a universal year one. And our source material says this is huge. It marks the beginning of a brand new 9-year destiny cycle. It's supposed to be this incredibly powerful time for fresh starts and big new beginnings.
Now, this isn't just some random one-time thing. It's a repeating cycle. To put it in perspective, the last time we had a year one was way back in 2017. Just think about that for a second. Think about where you were then and everything that's happened in your life since. We've basically just finished a whole 9-year chapter, which brings us right back to this powerful starting line in 2026.
But, and this is a big but, here's the catch. Our source describes this energy as just raw potential. And that can be a real double-edged sword if you're not careful, if you're not intentional with it.
So you've got two paths you can take, right? On one side, you can consciously plant seeds. This is all about laying a solid foundation, making really intentional moves with your job, your health, your relationships. It's about taking all that powerful energy and using it for real long-term growth. But then there's the other side of the coin, the risk of scattered energy. You know what I mean? Starting a million things but finishing none, missing out on amazing opportunities, and pretty much just letting all that incredible potential go to waste because you don't have a clear direction. And look, this source is super clear about the specific traps to watch out for. The number one trap, impatience. You know, trying to force things to happen right now instead of letting those seeds actually grow. Then, of course, there's shiny object syndrome, which is what leads to that scattered energy we just talked about. This source also points out that the so-called fire horse energy of 2026 can really crank up the risk of burnout. If you're not careful, you could end up totally drained and unprepared for what comes next. Okay, so that sounds a little daunting, right? If those are all the risks, how do you actually get through this year and make the most of it? Well, the good news is the source doesn't just leave you hanging. It actually proposes a kind of roadmap. One of the first things it offers is a way to make this energy personal to you by figuring out your personal year number. And it's actually a really simple 4-step process. First, you add your birth month and day together. Then, you crunch that number down to a single digit. After that, you add that digit to the universal year number, which is 1 for this year. And finally, you just reduce that last number down to a single digit. That's it. That's your personal number. And it's not just about that one number either. The source material lays out a whole structured approach, a complete system. We're talking about things like a monthly roadmap that highlights when the energy is best for certain actions. There are also optional things like rituals and practices for setting intentions. There's even a manifestation toolkit with things like journal prompts and ways to track your goals, all wrapped up in a concrete action plan with check-ins to keep you on track. It's the whole shebang, really. So, when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway here? What should we really remember from all this? Well, it all comes back to that core idea, that central metaphor of planting seeds. And the source material puts it about as directly as you can get. It says, everything you plant this year becomes the seed of your next 9 years. Just let that sink in for a second. That's a pretty powerful thought, isn't it? So ultimately, the core idea we're left with is this. 2026 is offering us this incredibly rare chance. It's a once in 9 years opportunity to consciously, intentionally shape the entire decade that's coming up.
And so, the final thought the source leaves us with is really a call to action. It frames the crucial question not as if you're planting seeds this year, because you are, whether you realize it or not, but rather, what seeds will you choose to plant?